All right, welcome to Season 2 of the AAC, Alliance Against Communism. I'm very excited that we got to Season 2. I'm still uploading podcasts every single week, and you're not done with Season 1 yet, but we are. Like, the work is done, but every week we release a podcast, so you'll be hearing our Season 1 throughout the time, and this is our Season 2, which you'll be able to hear in a couple weeks. But I want to get, I don't want to overburden our audience with long podcasts, so I kind of break them up, and then I just put them in pieces every week.
Yeah, I hope our listeners have been enjoying, and our sole purpose of doing this is we want the conversation to be out there. It's not a conversation just between Chris and myself. It's between everybody that believes that we need to stop this insanity that's going on in American culture.
And we do see that it's working. I mean, like, we see this, the Zeldin guy running for governor in New York, and he's talking about ousting, that stupid Alvin Bragg, Soros-backed district attorney, and that Ron DeSantis already kicked one out. So we see the fruits already happening,
Yeah, it's not just that, but looking at, like, the concept of MAGA, getting rid of the old the grand old party, getting rid of them like
the rhinos.
Well, technically they're the old style, and we're the new style of conservative.
Yeah, we're part of the Great Awakening conservative.
Absolutely.
The Great Awakening.
And getting rid of Liz Cheney was huge.
It was huge, yes. And we're going to get rid of each one of these people, one by one.
That's the goal. That is the fundamental of the AAC, is getting rid of and getting people that back the American people. The true sovereigns of America are the people itself. And people, we have forgotten that, and the government has made it their lifelong goal to make us forget about that we should be subservient to them, and that is not American culture.
See, what was our topic today is faith versus nihilism, and if you're a nihilist, then you don't really stand for, most of the time, you don't stand for nothing or believe in nothing, so therefore, you're just easily taken over, and you're indoctrinated easily, and you just kind of go along to get along, and whatever the government does, you are for it, basically. You know what I'm saying? Who cares? Because what does it matter? There's no meaning in life, so whatever happens, happens. It's the rule of the apes, basically.
Yes, it's a sad way of looking at things, in my personal
So opinion. Basically, I'm sorry, those cats scratching there. They scratch everything. Anyway, so what we want to say basically is that today's topic is about faith versus nihilism, and I'm more on the faith side, and Eric's more on the rationalist side, but he's still faithful. He just doesn't accept it yet, but he is still a very faithful person. Your actions show that you're a faithful person, even though you don't believe you are.
I've had people tell me that I'm more Christian than Christians that they know, and I'm more of a spiritual person. I've never read the Bible. I haven't been to church since I was young, very young.
Yeah, one thing I learned though is that there's talk is cheap and actions speak louder than words. Like, for example, a person could be really nice to you, whatever, by their words, and they could say a lot of things, but their actions show that they're basically an asshole.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I would rather have the person that gives me bad words, but their actions are nice.
You raised a really good point. I was reading this. I forget what article I was reading the other day, but they were talking about there's a difference between being nice and kind. And most people are nice to your face, but just like you're saying with their actions, they're not kind. They're in it for themselves.
Yes. So I think a person of faith will treat others as they treat themselves, love thy neighbor, and they will actually do it and not just talk about it. So I think Eric's character, even though he doesn't feel that he's a spiritual or a faithful person, his actions are very faithful. So I just want to bring that up. Anyway, so I'm more I'm more verbally, or I believe I'm more of a faithful person, but so I like to study religion. I like to talk about it, and Eric's more on the rational, intellectual side. I like them both, but so we're gonna have a kind of like a discussion on faith versus nihilism. And the reason why we're bringing this up is because we believe that there's a battle going on right now between us, basically like the right wing conservative, the faithful right wing conservative versus this nihilist Marxist enemy that's basically a domestic enemy within our midst. And we feel like we need to talk about this because this is more of a spiritual battle going on between two parties, two sources of ideologies, and it's usually faith versus nihilism. So we're going to talk about this topic so you get an understanding of what faith is and an understanding what nihilism is, so that you can better fight this war that's going on in our midst, that's literally going on right in front of our faces with all this child indoctrination. This is an attack on faith as we know it, child indoctrination.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about the point that you just made is I don't see what we're about to discuss as terms of right-wing or left-wing. I look at it in terms of who is in the right and who is in the wrong, who has society's best interests in mind or their own self-interest in mind.
It seems like, from what I understand, the left only has their own self-interest in mind. All they care about at this point, we're at to this. In my opinion, in America, we're at the point where the Democratic Party has basically lost the confidence of all its people, and it's the only thing it has left is to rule by fear. That's why they're hiring all these IRS agents. That's why they're doing FBI raids and all this stuff, because all they have left is fear. They've lost all credibility in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. I think that you're 100% right. If you look at the reason, and Chris and I are not these crazy Trump people, but look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump is one of these people that the deep state, the people on the left, even people on the right that don't like him, that are establishment, they're scared to death of this guy because he can't be controlled. They can't bribe him. He's too rich. They can't blackmail him because they say they have all this dirt on him, but I'd like to see where this dirt is.
They've been saying they have dirt on him for how long now?
And they have nothing. Everything comes up empty. I mean, all these ridiculous Mueller investigations, the impeachments, the Russia, and they have nothing. If the man is corrupt, I want to see that he's corrupt. I don't care if you're right wing or left wing. If you're corrupt, we need to take these individuals down, and you're showing me nothing. And just like Chris said, it's about fear, and they fear that man.
Yes, they do. And like I said, I'm not a Trumper this. I'm not a blind follower of anybody.
Absolutely.
And I don't think Eric's a blind follower of anybody either.
No.
So I like I said, I like the good things about Trump, and I don't like the bad things about Trump. Was Trump a decent person? Yeah, but I'm not putting my faith in a human being.
Yeah, like anybody, there's goods and bads, but what outweighs what? Is it more of a good or is it more of a bad? And I love the concept of America first, and they tried to spin this like, oh, make America white, and making it racist and sexist, and he hates gays and all this ridiculous nonsense, when all he wants is for everybody to prosper.
Yes, and even black businesses were prospering under him. I think
everybody
black income was at the highest during his presidency.
Yeah,
or black employment
and Latino.
Wow. And even Latinos are waking up to the right wing now. They're just seeing that's going on like massively right now.
Well, and I hope that we have Latinos listening to us, because
we do have some.
Our organization is like we're going to talk about tonight, is very faith based, and they are very faithful Christian people that care about the same values that Chris and I do.
I spent 7 years in Arizona with a lot of Latino people, and I was around a lot of Latino people, and Latino people are very strongly family oriented, very strongly faithful people. And of course, I don't want the illegal aliens coming here. I don't want that, but I am for legal immigration. Period.
Absolutely, we don't want it. I don't care what color you are. If you're coming here illegally, you're breaking the law.
Exactly.
Period. I don't care if you're white or brown or purple or green. You're breaking the law. I don't see them flooding over from Canada.
Yeah, they don't flood over from Canada.
You know what I mean? And they're doing this on purpose. And the Biden administration is doing this on purpose. And if you look at what's going on at the border, it's atrocious what's going on down there. And it needs to stop. And it's not just hurting Americans, it's hurting people from Mexico and South America.
It is. And the problem with these leftists is they don't have allegiance to the country, they have allegiance to all of humanity. So they don't even look at border lines. They feel like our allegiance is to all humanity, not to our nation. Unfortunately, that's not the way the world works.
Yeah. Well, they claim it's about humanity, but in reality, it's about their own self-interest.
It is. It really is. They can say all the crap that they want because their actions speak louder than their words.
Yep.
Because if they cared, they would be doing something, and they're not doing
but they seem to care more about other countries.
They care about monkeypox. care about monkeypox. It's a gay. Let's be honest. It's a gay disease, homosexual disease, or whatever virus.
95% of people that have contracted monkeypox are part of the
LGBTQ plus XYZ. Yeah,
men. And what really makes me sick about it, and they should be stopping this regardless. I don't care. That's where I'm more centered with the homosexuality or lesbianism. I don't care what your sexual orientation is. I really don't. I've made this point many times. But the thing that really makes me disgusted about the policies that have been going on is what happened with COVID. They shut down our society. They were literally holding people back from going and seeing their sick mothers or their sick fathers. These people are dying alone. They're scared, and we can't go see them. But with the whole monkeypox thing, it's like, well, heaven forbid that we stop your orgies and your piss parties.
Oh my God, isn't it crazy? You ever think about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
My goodness,
because they're afraid to stigmatize the gay community, and that's not stigmatizing. If that's where it's coming from,
that's a fact. Is a fact.
A fact is a fact. If the building is on fire, that's where the fire department goes.
Exactly. And you know what makes me really offended by this whole monkeypox thing is that fentanyl is killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. Fentanyl, killed my best friend.
Yeah.
And it's literally flooding our border. It's flooding our streets. People are dying every day from fentanyl. Yet that's not a national priority. Yet gay monkeypox, which has killed like 600 people. I don't know how many people. Whatever.
I don't know.
It's a very small amount. Not even close to fentanyl. And that's monkeypox is a priority and not fentanyl.
Yeah.
And the border is open where fentanyl is flooding our streets, killing Americans every single day.
Yeah, but we could get into that all day long about they care about this so-called global warming and the raising of CO2, but they don't ever talk about the pollution in the oceans. I mean, they pick a topic instead of tackling things that really truly matter.
That's why I'm saying this whole Democrat people, they need to go. They need to be voted out. We're tired of this crap. Everything they're doing is destructive. It's just hypocrisy. It's self-interested bullshit.
Well, the way that I see it is anyone, and I'm going to ram this home, I'm going to beat this dead horse into the ground. If our elected officials do not have our best interests in mind, they need to go. I don't care if you're an independent, a Republican, a Democrat. All I care about is candidates that care about me and my neighbor and my society.
The one thing I got to give the Democrats for, and the one thing that I have to penalize right-wingers for, is that the Democrats are actually doing something to help the Ukrainian people against Russia. They're actually, providing them weapons, doing that stuff. That is honorable. I mean, the problem with I see with like conservatives, like I said, I don't follow groupthink, and I'm not a blind follower. So I'm not gonna say I'm for everything for right wingers. No, what the Democrats are doing for Ukraine is actually good.
Yeah,
they're actually providing them weapons, helping them fight off this Russia. And on every comment that I see online that right wingers are saying, they say, Russia's in the right, and we shouldn't do anything. We should just let them fight it out and let Russia take over and let everyone do it. The right wingers are wrong about that. What they're doing, what the Democrats are doing with Ukraine is actually a right wing position.
Right.
And what the right wings is saying about Ukraine is actually a leftist position. To only care about America and nobody else is a leftist, selfish position that we should never ever get into. It's just a wrong position.
Yeah. But we could get into all like Chris and I creating the AAC. We are a conservative right wing. I'm conservative libertarian. And I see a lot of these right-wingers that are just as corrupt as the left. That it's, again, I just keep saying this, it's about self-interest, and it shouldn't be. What we're trying to do is we're trying to do the best for not only right-wingers, but what's best for the country.
Yes, best for the country.
There are a lot of...
Country over party, that's what it should be, yeah,
absolutely. I look at it, if you are a Democrat, but you're a moderate Democrat, there's no reason that we can't sit down and have a rational, philosophical conversation about the things that are going on in society. And we can agree, we can disagree, but we have to have the conversation. When you have these, and you have radical right-wingers that Chris and I would never even be able to sit down and talk to. Because they're too radical.
Yeah.
They're too, when they try to push this Nazism and call it a right-wing ideology, that is completely insane. Fascism is a left-wing ideology.
It is.
Period.
It is.
So to fly a swastika and then call yourself a right-winger, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, even the KKK were Democrats.
Yeah. Yeah.
The racists were always Democrats. If you look at the history of racism in the United States, they were actually Democrats.
Yeah, the first, how does it go? I may be getting this wrong, but the first 27 blacks that were elected into Congress were all Republicans.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's 27. It's 26 or 27 the first. And I think it was before the turn of the 20th century, mass majority of blacks in America were Republicans.
Now, let's be honest about the black issue, okay? I am not a racist, and I predominantly work with black people, and I have black customers and all that stuff, and there's no way anybody call me a racist, and I'm for black people to be free. I'm for black people to have strong families, but we cannot deny that there's an undeniable crime problem in the black communities today. And to deny this, to please people, is being intellectually dishonest, and it's harming the country. There is a major crime problem in black communities today.
It's harming black communities.
It needs to stop.
Period.
It needs to absolutely stop.
Because going back to my earlier point, if black people prosper, white people prosper, and when white people prosper, black people prosper, and trying to say like, oh, well, it's white privilege, that's just completely ridiculous. Everybody has the opportunity.
I do not judge people by the color of their skin, and I'm not going to call all black people criminals. I said my neighbor is black. I have actually both of my neighbors are black, and I have multiple black people living on my street. I work with black people every single day. Every single day I'm interacting with black people. So I will never say that all black people are criminals. I will never say that. But there is a crime problem, a criminal element in black communities today, and it needs to be dealt with. And I'm tired of everybody trying to please everybody. It needs to be told the truth.
Yes. The truth. The truth is an ugly thing. And was it Plato that said, if you tell the truth, you'll be hated? I think it was Pluto that said that.
Plato?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I heard something like that. So that's kind of our take on this, kind of a gist of what's going on at the moment. That's kind of our thoughts. We all kind of start out with a little bit of our thoughts, what's going on at the moment. And so we're going to get into this Faith versus Nihilism podcast, and I'm going to let Eric start it. And because he's got more of a balance, and mine's just more one-sided, because I'm more of the one-sided thing when it comes to faith versus nihilism. But anyway, both needs to be discussed, and we need to crush nihilism. And we're going to show you why nihilism needs to be crushed, because it is one of the sources of communism, Marxism today.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we're going to touch on the concept, or begin the concept of nihilism. I did quite extensive research on it, and I went down quite the rabbit hole, so I had to cut back all the research that I did.
Good. I mean,
because there was a lot of it.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. So I didn't want to make it as broad. So what I found was trying to see the correlation between, like, many believers argue that atheism is nihilistic. Like, atheists respond to this contention as like a personal insult. Now, some do, some don't. I would ask the question, like, what is nihilism? If our listeners, like, do you know what nihilism is?
In my perspective, nihilism means that, like, the life. In my opinion, or my take on nihilism, is that it's like life is basically has no meaning. That it's whatever. Like, there is no meaning. There's no objective truth. It's whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter what you do, because we're just basically carbon. It doesn't really matter, because there's no meaning. There's no purpose in life.
Yeah, we're
just basically a ball floating in space, and nobody gives a shit what we do.
Yeah, that's basically it. Like, the definition that I found was the notion that life has no intrinsic meaning or value, and it is no doubt the most commonly used and understood sense of the word today. So basically what you're saying is, put simply, nihilists deny absolutes exist.
See, that's what I believe. One take I have it on is the reason why I believe all these communists could murder all these millions of people
and justify
is because it doesn't matter, because there is no objective truth. It doesn't matter what they do. I just heard that Mao Zedong, that piece of shit, I don't care if you're Chinese, he was a piece of trash, killed like thousands and thousands of birds. I don't know, because the birds, he thought that birds were harming the food supply, but actually they were eating the bugs to stop. So they were eating the bugs to actually that protected the food supply, and people starved because he killed all the birds, because he thought he was protecting the food, because he's an idiot.
Yeah,
but the fact that you would kill all these birds because you're a nihilistic piece of crap That's what I'm saying. They don't care. They'll kill anything. They'll do whatever. It doesn't matter because nothing matters. There's no objective truth. There's no morality. There's no God. That doesn't mean whatever you do doesn't matter. You're just nothing.
Yeah, that's basically, like
sickening.
Like you were saying earlier, like nihilism seems like a precursor to communism.
I believe so.
Yeah, because, when I was an atheist, I still seen meaning in life.
See, we have some followers that I believe are atheists, but they still follow us, so they must have some values and good outlook in life.
Yeah.
So they're not all, you can't lump all atheists as nihilists at that point, because there's some atheists that still find purpose in life, right?
That's like existentialism.
I got you.
We'll
get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, but like for instance, like you're a theist, which from the studies that I've done, that theists, they disagree. They see that that purpose, that there's much purpose in like the social construct. Believers cannot hold the tenets of faith while accepting the position that a society can be fruitfully nurtured without moral absolutes. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I think moral absolutes are really important in my life, prospectively. As a person of faith, and I'm not trying to be egotistical like I'm a person of faith. I'm just saying as a person, I believe that I have faith. And I believe that moral absolutes is what I believe in. I believe that if you murder somebody, no matter where you are on the planet, it doesn't matter what legal system you are, that is an intrinsic wrong. And I believe that we should fight against that. It's murder. Unjustifiable homicide is wrong no matter what you do, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, so what you're saying is denying the existence of absolutes would go against the truth of God and his influence on the world.
Absolutely. If there was no absolutes, there would be no God. Because why would... I think absolutes and God are completely tied together. Because like the Ten Commandments themselves are like moral absolutes.
Yeah, okay, I can agree with that. And then dividing the fine line between theists and nihilists is whether such a thing is an absolute right, and if the rights and wrongs do exist.
I want to add one thing. It just kind of came to mind because this is kind of how we do our podcast.
Sure.
One thing is we have this strange notion in America where basically everything that if there's consent, then it's okay. I don't know why we take this mentality. Okay, for example, like, let's say you have a married couple and they both decide that they want to have an open relationship with each other. Okay, let's say they can date outside their marriage, they can have sex outside their marriage, and as long as there's consent, it's okay.
Yeah.
We have this notion in America where as long as there's consent, it's okay. But the truth is just because there's consent does not mean that if adultery is basically when people have sex outside of marriage in a marriage. Like, for example, if an unmarried person has sex with a married person, the married person has committed adultery, the unmarried person has committed fornication. Okay? So just because there's consent there doesn't mean that the act is not adultery. It's still adultery. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. If two parties are consenting, it doesn't stop the fact that action is adultery. So we got to this point in this country where just because there's consent, we think it's okay. No, it's still adultery. It's just because there's consent there doesn't mean that it's not a moral wrong. It's still you're still committing the moral wrong, even with consent.
Yeah, exactly. So religions, what I found is religions strive to make use of faith as like a moral compass by which to navigate cultures towards the common good and to avoid the perils of evil.
I think that's beautiful. That's a beautiful saying. We should put that as a saying for the AAC.
But obviously, I figured that you would agree with that. And from what I've read, especially with many of the theists that I've read on, that's basically what they all say. Because
think about it, just like we're going today, like this Biden regime that's pushing all this child sexual indoctrination, all this critical race theory that's dividing us. It's attack on our faith. It's we know it's a moral absolute that you do not indoctrinate children with sexuality. That's a moral absolute, and you're violating the moral absolute. And look at all these people of faith that are rising up against this. Faith stops us from destroying ourselves. Because if we let this government do this, and we allow them to indoctrinate children with sexuality, we're destroying the innocence of children. And because we have faith, we stand up to this. Faith is a good thing.
Well, it's like we were talking about earlier about like gay, like homosexual and lesbianism. If you look at the statistics on the boomers, our generation, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and now the Gen Zs, the statistics have gone from like 2% of the population being gay to now like 25%.
Wow. Now because they're pushing this crap.
Because they're pushing it. Instead of letting someone, like we were talking about earlier, like letting someone decide what they want. Like now it's like the in thing to be gay or to be lesbian. And again, you and I have different views on it. I really don't care what you do if you're not hurting anybody. But at the same time,
if there's no consent. See, I understand where you're coming from. You're not hurting anybody, but still, the action, even if they're not hurting anybody, it's still considered a wrong. Even if they're not hurting anybody, even if there's consent there, it's still considered wrong in the moral absolute eyes of God.
Yeah, there you go. Yes. See, now me, I honestly don't see how God has a problem with it. But we could really get into that. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
But that's the problem that I have with what's going on in society, especially with this transgender movement. Is like, let the people decide. If a little kid is talking about, oh, I'm not a boy today, I'm a girl. It's like when I was little, I thought I was Superman.
I used to work in law enforcement, and like I said before, this whole gay crap, transsexual, pushing this crap on this even existed, there was always a transsexual person here or there, a gay person here and there, and we never really cared.
Yes.
We never cared, but now because they're pushing it down our freaking throats every single day, that's why we care. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, did we even really care?
No,
it was just a person, no big deal. You would just care. For example, when I was in law enforcement, there was people that were picking on a transvestite person, and I stood up for the transvestite's rights.
Yeah, and you should have.
And because I have a class honor, and because it was the right thing to do. Because I don't believe that, even though I disagree with this person's decisions, whoever this is, a male or female, whatever it is, I will not allow people to victimize this person, and that's not going to happen. But I'm tired. You stop pushing this down my throat, because you're hurting. I'm a person of faith. You're pushing this down my throat. You're violating my faith. You're violating the moral absolutes of that. I believe in moral absolutism, and you're putting me in a position where it's basically my faith, or you're testing my faith at that point.
Yeah.
And how dare you test my faith? That's how I feel. Like, how dare you?
But that's it. It's you become obedient, or they're going to come after you over it.
And see, I'm not going to give up my faith because I'm fear of some stupid government or some stupid organization that's going to come after me.
Now that's where government has overstepped.
Absolutely.
They try and say this, and government is now using social media in order to serve their own ends. But what are their own ends? You know what I mean? Like, why would you push all of this on people? It's evil. It's wrong.
It's evil. It has to be a source of evil because it's violating the faith itself. It's violating. It's like completely violating faith.
Yeah.
Completely in every aspect. The only thing that could completely violate faith is pure evil, in my perspective, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny with the whole nihilism thing. It's like what standards do postmodern nihilists navigate to? The solution is offered to say that we find these absolutes as almost a natural law instead of it being, because I'm more about the individual. We've talked about this before. And when you're an individual, you make your own decisions. And when you have society making those decisions for you, this is an inherent problem.
That's collectivism.
Yeah,
that's hard. So you're getting to Marx's thought at that point.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of this nihilism actually goes into that.
Yeah, because you're following along. You don't have a sense of self-individuality.
Exactly.
You have no moral. There's no moral absolutes guiding you. So therefore, whatever's going, you just go with. Just go with whatever's going.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we're faced with many human wrongs, such as like genocide or ethnic cleansing, and we can hold those innate to their. It's a universal understanding of human rights, and it's wrong to not protect somebody. You look at it in terms of, say, like you were saying about going after that transgender person. That wasn't the collective of that day, so it was seen as okay. And now they're turning around and saying that if you aren't for it, they go after you.
Yes. See,
now that is a problem.
See, what's causing me a problem, especially a person of faith and a person of merit, which I believe I'm a person of merit because I've been working since I was 15 years old, and I have 2 master's degrees. I study a lot, I work a lot. I work hard in my life, so I feel like I have an intrinsic value in my life that I worked hard to get. All the stuff that I have in my life, everything I worked very hard to get, and I believe that there's people that have value. I think people of faith are valuable. People of merit are valuable. But here's the problem. The problem with this leftist ideology is that they want this inclusion crap is an attack on our society because they're trying to make everybody equal. They say a degenerate is equal with a person of value. No, it's not.
So that's
where
point.
I disagree with.
Yeah,
that's where you're trying to force me to recognize people who are degenerate and try to make them equal of people of merit and people of faith. No, those people are not equal in my eyes. They may be born, that God created them equal, but because of what they strove for and what they have, there's no way you can convince me that a person, a nihilistic piece of trash, is equal to a person of faith and merit.
Yeah.
By you trying to force me to believe that these people are equal, I will never, ever in my life accept that these people are equal. They're not equal.
See, that's a great point, because that's what I was talking about in terms of like genocide or ethnic cleansing. You find people that have faith, even people that are not nihilistic, that are atheists, they still see the value, the intrinsic value of people's lives. See, with nihilists, they have nothing to offer in response to these atrocities.
They have nothing.
They have nothing, just like you were saying about Mao Zedong or any of these fascists
Lunatics.
or these communists, that they don't see the value in it.
They don't see the value in people, right?
Yeah, and then going on what
because
you were
they
saying,
have no value. They have no intrinsic value themselves.
Yeah. Well,
they're just
well, could you imagine if you are nihilistic? And I'm not saying that all nihilists are, but from what I've read, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of self-hatred, and if you hate yourself, how are you going to find the value in somebody else?
Like Bill Maher, for example. Bill Maher is I watched his movie, his religious list. He made his movie, and he's basically in his movie. He kind of, in my perspective, he was saying that he's basically a nihilist. And he was just basically, there is no objective truth. Basically, that's what his whole point is. Like, that you can say all this, you can say all this, but he seems like he was very unhappy because he was drinking and stuff like that. He seemed to be depressed because he's a nihilist. He has nothing to believe in.
Yeah, well, that's what I discovered in this. And he makes, I've seen the movie also, and there's a point in that movie. Our listeners that have seen that movie, when he asks the guy, the religious guy, I don't remember who he was talking to, but he asked him, how can God be three different things at once?
He said wind, fire, whatever it was, the three things.
Well, he said, no, how can you be the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit at the same time? And the guy said to him, it's the same thing. It's the same reason that water can be three things at once. It can be a solid, a liquid, or a gas. That was a brilliant response.
It was, though.
I mean, but think about that for a minute, because it can be because water can be three different states. So why
we're going to get into that when we get into the faith about. That's part of the Aryan heresy we'll talk about. Yeah.
So the point that I was making with nihilists is they have no response to any kind of atrocity whatsoever. They look at it in terms of who cares, because nothing has value. But then going on like Chris being a Christian, Christians do. They believe that the natural law by which God imprinted upon creation is written within all of our hearts, and it exists, and that faith has a higher authority than the state of the country or ethnic loyalty. Correct?
Well, think about person of faith. Think about this, though. Like, I was reading this book, I forgot the name of it, but it said that a person of faith, an idealist, it was willing. Listen, this is the difference. This is deep. Okay, the person of faith, the idealist, is willing to suffer for the greater good.
Yeah.
Okay, but the person that has no faith, that's basically a nihilist, the only thing that drives him is pleasure and pain.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
He's that. If it's painful, he's going to run from it.
Yeah.
But see, a person of faith, a person of an idealist will willingly suffer for the greater good.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a person of faith.
Yeah, because it causes them to oppose evil, because that's what God demands.
See, basically, a nihilist, to my perspective, is just a hedonist. They just follow the pleasures and avoid the pain.
Yep.
That's in my perspective. That's how I see the nihilist.
Hedonist. That's a good way. It's almost like animalistic.
Yeah, it's almost like an animalistic instinct. It just
but
pain. If good, feels good. Good. If it's pain, run. That's kind of it is.
Well, it's interesting because we're self-aware and animals are not. So animals don't know that they're following, that they're hungry, that they're thirsty.
They don't know.
No, from what I've read,
they don't know if they're hungry.
Well, I mean that they're not aware. Their body tells them that they're hungry. Their body tells them that they're thirsty. We're aware of this.
Okay.
So they're not aware, like for instance, like animals aren't sexually depraved, for instance. They do it for a certain purpose and then they move on.
Gotcha.
Like with say mammals, they have mating seasons. You know what I mean? They're not just running around having sex with everything that they can see.
I got you.
So they're not depraved in that way. Like you're saying, pleasure and pain.
Yeah.
That's how they see it. With nihilism, you're aware of this, but yet you don't care either way.
You don't care.
Yeah. So I mean, you have to wonder, what's going on in their minds. Because if you give up on life, you're only bringing negative. You're only looking at it in terms of self-interest.
We were just like we're talking about the hippie thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's talk. Earlier we were talking about the hippie thing. So basically, we believe that this hippie movement was such a great movement that was all about peace and love. But in reality, if you really look at it from what it is, from a rational and a faith perspective, that scene, the hippie scene, was nothing but just selfish debauchery.
Yeah, because
pleasure. That's
what
it.
they wanted you to believe during the hippie movement, and even when I was younger, going to all these concerts, was that it was about self-liberation. And in reality, that's not what self-liberation is. It was just your baser urges, get as high as you can.
Just being a slave to your baser urges. That's what it's all about.
Yes.
Now, I think the hippie movement was an attack on America, basically to make us to stray from virtue into vice and just be a slave to our passions. Self-liberation is just basically to make you a slave to your passions.
Yeah.
In my perspective, that's all it was.
Yeah.
That's all it was. It was nothing but a bullshit movement. Sorry, I gotta stop swearing. But bullcrap movement.
No, that's okay. I also looked at it in different, because there's different forms of nihilism, or at least in that general sphere, like people that step away from faith. And the three that I touched on was existentialism, nihilism, and absurdism. And now, existentialism I found very fascinating. There's a lot of philosophers that got into it, and they raised very interesting points. Defining it is the belief that through a combination of awareness, self-will, personal responsibility, one can construct their own meaning within a world that intrinsically has none. So think about that for a minute. You can believe in God. You don't necessarily believe in God. Going back to my comment on atheism, like atheists are not necessarily nihilists, but they still find meaning in life. They're still, let's just say hypothetically that God doesn't exist.
Okay.
But they're still finding meaning in life.
They still find meaning.
Yeah, and I thought that was very fascinating, because it's not this radical ideal to where nihilists see it as no intrinsic meaning in the universe, that life is pointless, and to try to construct our own absolutes is nil and void. It's pointless. It's meaningless. Who wants to live a life like that?
Who wants to live a life like meaningless? There's no life. Whatever you want to do is whatever you feel like doing.
Yeah.
It's like what a Satanist does almost. Like there's no meaning. Just follow your desires, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter.
Well, in a way,
they are basically a type of Satanist.
But I mean, would they believe in the devil? That's I never got into that. I don't think.
I think they are following the devil, but they don't maybe they don't believe in it.
They're not aware of.
They're not aware of it.
Not
probably
aware of their actions. Yeah,
possibly.
And then the concept of absurdism, I found it kind of interesting. The definition was belief that a search for meaning is inherently in conflict with the actual lack of meaning, but that one should both accept this and simultaneously rebel against it by embracing what life has to offer. So it's a definition that contradicts itself. So it's saying that life is meaningless, but you should find meaning anyway, is basically how you define it. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's pretty deep. You know, if I thought about it, if I didn't have faith and I was a nihilist, I would just be a womanizer. I would literally just be a womanizer, because there's nothing that I would just be following my desires, right? So I would just be going from woman to woman. If I was a nihilist, that's all my life. If I was truly a nihilist, the only thing that I would be doing was just be a womanizer. Yeah. That would be my purpose in life. I would just be following my passions. It doesn't matter. Like that's it.
That's so interesting because that was my next point. And
wow,
you bring that
really?
up. Yeah, that was like the way that I seen the life of a nihilist is they have three different options. They have philosophical suicide, such as completely embracing any religion or spiritual framework because one believes that it is too hard, too sad, or too difficult to live without one. That's an interesting concept, that you believe in God because somehow society forces you to, instead of you embracing it yourself. So in
So
a way,
they don't believe that anybody embraces it themselves just because it's a forceful construct, social construct.
yes, that's what they. And
See,
then,
that's what a person of faith would, a person of no faith would say. It's just forced
Yes.
upon you because they don't have that intrinsic faith.
yeah,
in
so they
themselves.
look at it like it's too sad to live without the religion, or life is so meaningless that I need the religion to find meaning.
So they believe. So kind of, can you bring in more of a realistic concept of what you're talking about, like an example?
I'm not a nihilist, so we'd have to ask them. But that's what I found is that they raise arguments that the reason that a lot of people find faith, if they don't have faith early in their lives, they find faith later in their life. They go to this because it's more socially acceptable, that their friends are religious, and they find that their friends are religious and they're happier. Their family is religious and they're happier. So they try to find this religion, or they pretend that they're finding this religion in order to find happiness. So instead of looking for it on your own, looking at it in a philosophical way like I'm trying to do, they look at it in terms of it's better than nothing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now,
I can
does
see
that make
Yeah,
more
it makes a little
sense?
bit more sense.
Because to me, I'm trying to look at it on the outside of, like, from what I've read about nihilists and what nihilists have said, and different philosophers that are into this nihilist movement. I don't agree with it. So I'm, like I said, I'm looking at it from a distance. I'm trying to get a bearing and an understanding of what they're thinking and what they're saying about it, but I don't agree.
So basically, a nihilist. Okay, for example, you have two people, one person playing a video game and one person calling people to Christ, for example.
Right.
So a nihilist would say it doesn't matter what you're doing; both are equally. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
That's what a nihilist would do. So,
Yes.
so if a person's calling a person to Christ, a person's playing a video game, the nihilist would say, like, it's probably a better idea to play the video game because because you can at least get some more sensible value out of it.
Yeah.
That's what a nihilist would believe, right?
Yeah, that's what it. I mean, yeah, that's.
Wow, that's pretty sad.
It's really sad. But then that goes into my next point. The second point was
How come I'm getting to all your next points? That's pretty good.
yeah, really. Well, because obviously we're getting good at this.
Yeah.
But the next one is physical suicide, due to life being ultimately meaningless. Therefore, either too boring or too painful to continue. Meaning that when you become a nihilist and you see things as meaningless or not having value,
You have to be depressed.
Oh, well, I've read
'Cause nothing matters.
I've read that some people were saying, like, I'm a nihilist and I enjoy being a nihilist. So you enjoy being in the dark.
That's what they say, but they might not be being truthful. I mean,
True.
they're not
Yeah.
being truthful. Just because they say something doesn't mean it. They could be intrinsically unhappy. They don't.
Well,
even know
they
that.
could be looking at it, like, for instance, like we were talking about earlier. They could look at it, say, like us. We're a great example of this. Like, I've never been married. I don't have kids. And they told me growing up that that's the life that I wanted to lead. And now where I am in my life, I think I missed out on having a wife and having a family. And that's actually what I'd like to strive for in the next couple
Me too.
years.
I feel the same way.
But do you see what I'm saying? So with a nihilist, they may believe that right now, but then a couple years down the road, even months, who knows, and they start to realize that the life decision that they made was not the right one for themselves.
I mean, think about it. Just think about this though. Like when you're in your old age, you're actually there's somebody that if you have raised children, they're going to care for you when you're old. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not going to be alone. It's a good thing to have, and you see the fruits of your labor by you seeing a successful child. That's got to be a great feeling.
Well, our listeners right now, how many of you have children, and you look at your children and you see it as the most amazing accomplishment of your life?
And the left tries to brainwash everybody that this is just nothing but a burden.
Oh yeah, they do that with this nonsense, with this feminist movement, and like that show Sex in the City, where you basically, going back to the whole nihilistic thing, you just live you go against your own natural way. Going back to the gay stuff, and just let people be people, and they're almost pushing this ideal that you'll be happier this way instead of letting someone make the decision on what makes them happy in the first place.
Yeah, let's get, what else is what's going on in this family life, because some of my friends have family. When I'm learning from James Lindsay too. James Lindsay is a guy who talks about critical race. He's a very smart guy. Anyway, what I'm learning is that these leftists are all about institutions now. Like, for example, they're trying to trump parental authority. Like, for example, there's a lot of articles I'm reading where they want to sexually indoctrinate kids, even and they want to keep it secret from the parents. They're even explicitly saying they want to keep it secret from the parents.
Yeah.
They're even trying to pass laws that they're trying to protect this gender affirming crap, even if it's against parental consent.
Right.
They're trying to trump and supersede parental authority. And for example, like CPS, which I agree with. Intrinsically, I agree with CPS, Child Protective Services. I do agree we should protect children. But the bottom line is, like my friend, for example, is going through a lot. Like my friend who's married, he's married, he's got children, and his in-laws are creating all these problems in his family. His wife's mother inside, whatever, and they're calling CPS on him, doing everything they can to destroy his parental authority. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to trump his parental authority, and CPS is trumping his parental authority. He's losing faith in his own power over his family.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, look, man, regardless of what these leftists are doing, you as the man have the authority over your family, and you as a man have the authority to protect your family from evil. And I said, don't ever believe that these leftists can take that power from you.
See, now that's a scary prospect, because this is where government overreach has far overstepped its
Absolutely,
boundaries.
100%. So he says he's giving up hope. He's like, basically, I'm almost to the point where I'm just walking away. I have no power anymore. I said, but bro, I said, you need to put your foot down and get these in-laws out of your life completely. You cut this cancer out and stop this crap and basically take your parental rights. You have to stand up for your parental rights. The father is the head of the household, period, and you need to stand in that and protect that, in my perspective, in my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, and then
that's a moral absolute, by the way.
Yeah,
they're by them infringing on parental rights is violating a moral absolute. Is 100% violating a moral absolute.
Yeah, so it shows where our government is. This is why we're choosing to fight against it.
Yes,
that's the beauty of living in America, which I've been studying the Constitution and stepping away from what the Constitution is all about is exactly what Chris just said.
Really?
Yeah, it literally says that we, the people, are the sovereigns. We make our own decisions, and when the government oversteps,
wow,
they're no longer doing their job because it is no longer the consent of the governed.
I do not consent them to do this.
Yeah, because, we're the ones that are governed, and we choose. We live in a constitutional republic. We choose our representatives, and if our representatives don't have our best interests in mind,
get them out.
They're not doing their job. Oh, they need to be pulled out of office.
Absolutely. Wow, that's deep.
So the last point of the nihilist was acceptance, that which meaning that they continue on knowing that ultimately meaning is not possible, which I find that actually rather sad. I see that not finding intrinsic value in something, it amounts to intellectual laziness. It's emotionally weak, and to say that life is too difficult to continue on or to accept it's easier for you to not believe is just sad. It's a sad ideology.
It's a lazy position, right? You don't have to do anything. There's nothing. There's no discipline. There's no self-sacrifice. There's nothing. It's just basically I exist and it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. It's a lazy position. It's a laziness position.
Yeah, because
you're basically it's a loser position. You're a loser.
Yeah, you're
an intellectual loser, in spiritual loser
in every way, not just intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. You're like laying down.
You're basically at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah,
like you're basically lying down.
Yeah, because think about it like this: what value do they bring to society?
Nothing.
There you go.
Nothing. I mean, if they work a job, if they have to make a living, they might be getting value by making a living, but they're not doing it to help anybody. They're just doing it just for themselves.
Yeah, so we live in a society, we live in a country of 330 plus million people. And could you imagine if, because faith is declining, not only in America, but in the Western world, and look at where we are in the Western world.
Did you know, listen to this. This is deep, and then we're going to talk about this when we get to my faith, when we get to my part. But anyway, sin, see what the problem with sin is, this disobedience to God, and what sin does to the human being, I just learned this, is that it depreciates the sanctifying grace within us. And listen to this, it depreciates the love of thy neighbor in our heart, the duty to our neighbor. Every time somebody sins, it's destroying that sense of duty for thy neighbor. So if somebody sees a wrong, for example, like if I'm a person of faith and I see somebody getting victimized, because I have love of neighbor in my heart, I'm going to go and intercede and help that person becoming victimized. But a person that's within sin is in extreme selfishness. He sees an evil in the world. He just says, I don't care. It's not my problem, because all he cares about is himself. And that's exactly what we see going on all across. We see these politicians that don't give a damn about anything that's going on. For example, in New York, people are being victimized in the streets every single day, and these politicians are turning the blind eye to it. They're not even saying anything because they don't give a damn, because their love of thy neighbor is gone. It's just all about themselves. Yeah. And that's what faith, when you have no faith, that's what happens. It's all about selfishness, debauchery. Yeah. And nobody has any love of thy neighbor. Nobody has the duty to help others, the duty for the greater good. It's gone. It's just selfishness.
That's when society falls apart.
Exactly. And it deserves to fall apart at that point.
Yeah, because in society, this is one thing that I love about being an American, is we're very, even just being a Westerner, we're very individualistic, but at the same time, we're all in this together. We have to do this together. And if we're not, the saying, if we're not pulling our own weight, if we're not towing the line, like, this is why they want us to live in a socialist society, because they think that the government should be basically doing everything for us. I think that's ridiculous. We should be doing everything not only for ourselves, but when, like we were talking about earlier about the black community or white communities or Latino communities, when we all prosper, we all prosper. I mean, when the black community does well, the white community is going to do well.
Because if there's doing well, that means there's more goods and services being produced.
But
therefore you have to be doing better.
It means that we're focusing on the positives in society. We're going to have our differences, even if you have a black community and a white community and a Latino community and an Asian community. If the black community is healthy, it's not going to be crime-ridden. If a white community is healthy, it's not going to be crime-ridden, and it's not going to spill over into other communities, which it has.
It has, yes, it is. Crime-ridden communities are terrible.
They love to say that it doesn't and it needs to be ignored, but that's completely ridiculous.
See, the one thing about these stupid leftists, and I'm just sick of them, but they have this lawless societies that are going on, and it's an attack on freedom. They want to think that the defund the police movement is about freedom. No, it's actually an attack on freedom, because for people to be free, they have to be safe. They have to be able to travel freely, be able to think freely, talk freely, do things freely. When they can't do those things, they're not free.
Right.
If I have to worry about getting mugged before I go to the store, I'm not truly free.
Yeah.
Because I have something is preventing me from my freedom. So having strong law and order is actually a staple of freedom. You have to have law and order in place to have freedom.
Well, did you hear just recently Ilhan Omar of Minnesota? She was the one 2 years ago screaming not just to defund the police, but to abolish the police completely. She just recently was complaining about how the major metropolitan cities in Minnesota are completely crime-ridden. She's the one that's at fault for it. She's the primary actor of why this happened. One of the primary actors. This is where these Democrats are, and this is an old tactic. What they do is they cause all these problems, and they tell you that they're the solution of it.
But they're the ones who caused it. So you can't. If they're the ones who caused it, and you elect them again, do you really think they're? How are you gonna trust somebody that caused the problem to fix the problem? Yeah. The only way to fix the problem is to get rid of them.
Exactly.
It's a virus. It's a virus.
Yeah. So, throughout my studies, I found that there are two ways to view faith and nihilism. The way that nihilists look at it is, and even people in faith, they look at it as to rebel or to surrender. A person who has surrendered will say that they believe in their social construct completely, and it provides true meaning in the universe, while someone that has rebelled may say that they have adopted a rendering for practical reasoning, which I don't necessarily call that practical reasoning, but they know that it's artificial. And it appears to me that the new convention of things is to rebel against modern thought and to believe in God. Because surrendering would be bending the knee to your baser urges. Would you agree?
Yeah, surrendering is bending the knee, especially if it
because
goes against your conscience.
Now, the nihilist believes that you're surrendering and not rebelling. And I see it as the other way around. Because rebelling, and especially in modern thought, is to be like you or to be like me, to where you have your faith and you will not compromise your faith regardless what anybody tells you.
Yes.
Regardless what they threaten you with. This is what the AAC is all about. We will never bend the knee. We will never compromise what we believe in, because that's the point of doing this in the first place.
Yes, if you're nihilistic, you just surrender.
Yeah, and they believe that it's a rebellion, not a surrender.
They believe it's a rebellion.
They see us as surrendering. I see them as surrendering.
So they look at us as somebody that's rebel. We're rebels, but we're just staying true to our faith.
Yeah.
We're not really rebels. They're the ones that are rebelling, actually.
Well, see, I see it as in they believe that we're the ones that surrender and they're the ones that rebel. But I see it as the other way around.
I see what you're saying. Other way around. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I see that we're the ones that are rebelling, because the popular consensus of today is do what thy will. You know, in reality, you can't do that. You literally, moderation in all things.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't see any problem with people drinking or whatever, like we've talked about smoking weed, as long as these things don't get in your everyday life. If every day all that you think about is going home and having that drink or having that smoke, you've missed the point.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So obviously, life is not fulfilling to you.
It's the fact that you want to alter your consciousness, and you can't wait to alter your consciousness by getting high and getting drunk.
Yeah.
There's an intrinsic problem there, I believe, that you have to deal with.
So there's a depression. Like when I was drinking, I wasn't depressed, but I wasn't happy.
Yes.
You know, so now that I'm not drinking, I'm actually happier now than I was when I was drinking. And I said that I had a control of it, but I actually didn't, because anytime that I wasn't in the best mood or feeling like dealing my daily life, that's when you turn to the bottle. And I'm not the only person. There's millions of us out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I got you to see that point. But anyway, that makes a lot of sense about nihilism. So basically, the reason why we're talking about nihilism is because the Marxist, it seems, doesn't have the faith, and it just basically they're nihilists. That's why they can do all this crazy things like childhood indoctrination, kill millions of people, no conscience, do all this. Because I believe what's driving them is this sense of nihilism. They've given up on faith. They have this sense of nihilism where they just want what's pleasing to them, and it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's just whatever's pleasing to them at the time, whatever pleases their senses. That's what they want to do. And I think that's inherently nihilistic.
Well, the interesting thing about the nihilism that I found is they see it more as a philosophical thing, and I don't. In my opinion, I see it as it could be just as subjective as religious individuals. I could argue that maintaining extreme clarity, like I was talking about with the drinking, between seeking the benefits of belief and intrinsic meaning by knowing that it is possible, is the same as not accepting the natural law by being aware that someone or something is listening to us. Like meaninglessness could be, it could have meaning or it could not have meaning. And the way that they're seeing it is they're being philosophical by saying that there's no meaning, but in reality, that could be just as subjective as believing in God. You see what I'm saying? And they see it as like we're talking about rebellion versus surrender. And I see it as in, why do you see it as there is no God? Because you don't know. You literally don't know. So saying that you believe in God, let's just say hypothetically, I'll play devil's advocate. Let's say that you believe and I don't. Well, who's to say that you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong?
That's see what like I'm saying? Nihilistic type of thing. You're right, I'm wrong, who's wrong? And then is that more of like a nihilistic type of thing?
No, that's more existential.
Okay.
But with the nihilism, what I'm saying,
they don't even care about right and wrong, right?
Well, what they're saying is by you believing in God, you're wrong.
Wow. That's where I have a problem.
And that's what I just said. Like, it could be just as subjective to think that God doesn't exist as the fact that God does, if you want to believe.
You know, one thing I read about Stalin, since you brought this up, since you brought this up, is that the one thing about the communists didn't like and when they were in power, is that they didn't care if you believed in God. What they cared about is if God told you to do something and you do it. That's what they hate. Is what you can believe whatever you want, but if you believe that God, for example, is telling you that you're supposed to control the state this way because God is telling you, that's where they have a problem with it. They hate that.
Right.
They hate that. So they don't want you to impose like any type of moral absolutism on them. They don't want that at all. They hate that notion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see, but it goes against their ideology. That's why
it does.
It
goes directly against their ideology.
Yeah, that's why they're going to hate it. Because let's say, for example, that you're right, then that negates everything that they think and believe.
Absolutely. And they, I read this one quote. It says the reason why they have such a problem with like religious moral absolutism is because it reminds them of how wrong they are when they witness it, and they just it affects their conscience, and they don't want that. They don't want to see or hear that.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I see it is nihilism negates progress. From everything that I've read, one can always improve on oneself. You know,
if you're a nihilist, it doesn't matter if you improve or don't improve. Exactly.
Becoming a better version of yourself. Like me, I've talked about Stoicism. Like I love the ideal of Greek philosophy, which we've stepped away from in Western society. We should all understand Greek philosophy, Roman philosophy, the Renaissance, even Shakespeare, and we've completely stepped away from all that. We've gone to knowledge and negated wisdom, basically. And I think that's sad that. That there is ground in natural reality. I mean, let's
natural
say,
law, right? You're talking about like natural law.
No, not even just natural law, yeah, but in a natural reality that we do exist and that there is meaning to our existence.
Yeah, if there was no meaning, then life would be just depressing.
Yeah, because in Stoicism, what Stoicism basically says is that that there are negative aspects in life, and instead of being the nihilist and laying down and ignoring it and saying, well, why bother? What they're saying is what you do is you take it on and you turn it into personal responsibility.
Can you give me more of an example? What do you mean by that?
Okay. If you see, like, for instance, say you were talking about the guy that the state is trying to take his kids away from him.
Yes.
He could just say, screw it, and not do anything about it.
He could.
In Stoicism, it says that what you do is when things get rough, when things get hard, instead of giving up, you strive and persevere in making it a personal vendetta against whoever is coming against you.
Yeah, I like that.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, with nihilism, they would say, well, why bother? Because it doesn't matter either way. Take them or keep them.
It doesn't matter, right? In nihilism, it's so bad.
That's actually a very sad place to be.
You know, one thing about, like I said, the thing that bothers me most about nihilism is that I'm very big on valuing the individual, the person of merit and the person of achievement. And to lump those two people together with a loser and a person of merit and to say that they're equal and it doesn't matter, to me, that's just a violation of everything that humanity and faith is built upon. Like, the merit system is like, to overthrow the merit system is like my personal hell. To think that I'm equal, to think that just an uneducated person is equal with me, and I strive so hard to be educated and all this stuff, and to accept somebody, to force me to accept somebody who is equal as me, who is not even close to my, I'm not saying I'm trying to be egotistical, who's close to my level of understanding.
Right, no, I get it.
I can't accept that. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Now that is what you're saying is the basis of what Western, not even just Western world, but just humanity itself. Like the old saying that the cream rises to the top.
Yeah, that's the old saying.
When you work, there are so many people, and there's people that are trust fund babies and have been given everything their whole lives. But in America, especially America, how many people that have started out with nothing and worked their backsides off and came to the top because they worked for it? No one gave them a leg up. No one gave them because of their white privilege or because they're black and they got some affirmative action staple or whatever it was. They persevered and they rose to the top. So what you're saying, I couldn't agree more. You don't put someone that didn't work for anything, doesn't have anything, and then looks at you for being privileged because you do.
That makes me so angry. You know, when for people look at you like an envy, because of what you put the work in, you put it, and they have envy against you because maybe you have white privilege, or they're looking at you like for example, I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you're working a job and you move up in your job, okay, and then somebody's looking at you like, oh, this guy, he just has white privilege, and he's envious of you because you moved up, but he doesn't know, or he doesn't care that you worked, you got a degree, you put in 20 years in this company, you did all these things, and he doesn't care. All he sees is that you have white privilege because you moved up, but they don't see that you have the degree. You strove for this. You did all this, and you just say he just has white privilege. That makes me so angry, and that's exactly how the leftists are brainwashing people to be. And I'm so sick of it. It makes me sick to my stomach to see that.
Well, that's, I mean, like the way that everything that I read, the way that I defined it myself with nihilism is nihilism doesn't create nor give birth to. It simply consumes and destroys.
That's what we're seeing today in the left. That's what they're doing. It's just destroying everything.
I mean, isn't that wild?
Yeah, it is. It's happening. It's destroying.
You know, so when you step away from the good in life, if that's God, and let's say that it is God, that God is love, and it's ingrained in us. It's built into us. You know, it's like the purpose of faith and having faith is to stave off this nihilistic view by looking at the world as a good place, not a negative place. I mean, obviously you would agree with that.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Claiming that there's more value in truth in the world, and it exists on this earth. When you start, like, it's like that old saying. It's like, if you think negative, you get negative.
You know what comes to mind when you bring that up? For example, like if I'm pursuing some type of knowledge, a nihilist type of person would be like, okay, well, what's in it? Why if you're pursuing this knowledge? Okay, what's the material benefit for you pursuing this knowledge? So what are you going to get out of this? Are you going to get money out of this? You're going to get some kind of prize, some kind of reward out of this? Like, my reward, if I'm studying something, is for just to get the understanding of it. I might not necessarily make money from it, but I want to get the understanding. That's my benefit is the understanding. But a nihilist be like, okay, well, there's no reward for it, so why even do it? Like, you're not going to. Why even do it?
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to get paid for it, so why even do it? So
Exactly.
what's the point? So what's the point? See, that's where I disagree. I can't have that.
I honestly, what you just said, I think that's where humanity has fallen.
It's just self-interest. It just all cares about what's the reward.
Like what you and I are doing right now, what we're doing with our organization, we're doing it because we believe it's the right thing to do. We're not doing it because we're looking to get rich off of it or looking to benefit in some way. If we can get through to people and talk of the truth and see the truth the way that it's meant to be seen, it's not Chris's truth and Eric's truth and Sally's truth. It's everyone's truth. There isn't 5 different truths or 100 different truths. There's just one truth, and it belongs to all of us.
Absolutely.
You know.
So this is the nihilist. It's a scary position. It's an inherently bad position.
Yeah, it's
laziness. It's a lazy position to take. It
yeah.
Really
So
is.
I mean, I'll end it with this. The question that I would pose is why in we've talked about this before, and why in all walks of life, all cultures, man and women, not only do we believe in a higher power, we believe that it exists. Like, and this isn't just in Western, it's everywhere that you go in life. We all reach out to some higher power. Like, that's not just a coincidence.
You know, it's funny. It's funny is that when I was a Muslim, I did the study on what the Soviet Union did to the Muslims. And I got a book. It was a book I got from I got this book from the library, and it was a book exactly what the Soviet Union did to the Muslims, how they attacked and destroyed the faith of the Muslims. And the book was like 20 years old, but it was never touched. Nobody ever read it, even read it. And the stuff they did against the people of faith was insane.
Yeah.
It was insane. The stuff they did to them, and nobody cared. And the funny thing is, I read the book and I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to go up to a mosque to talk about it. Let's see what the Soviet Union did to these Muslims, and they said nobody cared.
Really?
Nobody cared.
No one cared.
No one cared. They didn't even want me to do it. They said nobody's not going to care. Nobody's going to care anyway, so why even talk about it?
Wow. I would have talked about it anyway.
See, that's what I'm saying. See, I care about those things because it matters. It matters.
Right.
But see, they don't care. They just don't care because it doesn't apply to their situation now. It doesn't help them now. So they don't give a shit. They don't care. You know, it's sickening. That's the mentality that people have today.
Yeah,
it's whatever is the reward, whatever is the status quo. It's just I just disagree with the whole notion. You know,
well, it's I think we were talking about this earlier. Like it seems that when humans, when we people are, when we're taken away from the prospects of God and in a higher consciousness, we tend to waste away. We're plagued by pessimism, nihilism, depression. We become degenerates. That we revolve around our own baser urges. And like I was saying, not quite like an animal. Like I was talking about how animals are not aware of these baser urges, but we become like degenerates, like someone or something that takes pleasure in depravity. Claiming that we do not see a distinct difference between good and evil, but gravitating towards the true definition of evil, seeming to take pleasure in the negative.
That's what it seems like society's going with this leftism. I mean, they take pleasure in the negative, and then what's right, they call you basically a right-wing extremists.
Well, the point that I'm making is, and I'll keep saying this about nihilism, is it seems that from what I've read in nihilists that I've known, is they say that there's no distinct difference between good and evil, but they tend to gravitate towards evil. They tend to gravitate towards the negative. So if there's no distinct difference, why would you not be doing good and bad instead of just doing
because
bad?
I believe because they have no faith, because faith is what strives us to do good. If there's no faith, then there's nothing but evil.
That's the argument that we're making. Because if they're saying that there are no absolutes, that nothing matters, then why would you not look at it and say, well, I'm going to help so-and-so just because it makes me feel good, or I'm going to steal from so-and-so because it makes me feel good. Do you see what I'm saying? There should be a distinction between the two, that, yeah, sometimes I do good and sometimes I do bad. But it's never anything that we would define as good. We always define it as bad. Why are they gravitating towards bad if nothing matters?
Like I said, I think the lack of faith causes people to be evil.
Well, then that's the argument.
That's the argument.
Then that touches on what we'll talk about in the next segment.
I think I was watching this one video where this black guy attacked another black guy, and he basically shot the guy. But he shot the guy once, I believe, and then as the guy was shot, he took his cell phone and made him give his password so he can use his cell phone. And then after he got his password, he shot him dead. So
really?
The bottom line is, like, so I think that guy was a nihilist because all he cared about was the reward of him getting the cell phone. He didn't care what he had to do because life is meaningless. It doesn't matter. All he cares about is the reward. He just took that guy's life just for his cell phone, and it literally, that's what a nihilist does. It doesn't matter. They will kill you just like that. It doesn't matter because it doesn't matter. All they care about is the reward. It doesn't matter.
Well, they may not realize that they're nihilistic, but they obviously are.
Yes. Extremely narcissistic too. For some reason, nihilists are extremely narcissistic. You ever realize that?
Yeah.
Like, you have to be an extreme narcissist to want to kill somebody just for your own benefit.
Well, you're going to be an extreme narcissist when all you care about is yourself.
Exactly. So basically, not having the faith causes you to be a narcissist and causes you to be extreme selfish and makes you gravitate towards evil. Having faith is what causes you to want to strive towards virtue and having duty to thy neighbor.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
That's what faith is.
I agree.
Faith is. That makes sense.
But there's like, and that's what religious believe, is they believe that there's a reward for doing this, that we do good, and that good is going to come upon us. That's still.
Listen to this now. I just learned something about this. This is deep. Now, that is still kind of a nihilistic attitude because you're only doing good because good's going to come to you.
No.
Listen to this.
That's not what I'm saying.
I know, but listen to this point. This guy made a good point. I'm not saying this, but I went on evangelizing. I've been evangelizing every week now, and I went a guy who has been evangelizing for 10 years. Listen to this, and I asked him. He asked me, "What is the purpose of life?" I said, "I don't know. I only know the Islamic purpose of life. I don't know the Christian purpose of life yet." So what he says, what is? He says the purpose of life is to give love. Listen to this. He said something deep. I'm trying to paraphrase as best as I can. To give love, to want the good for somebody, and to give somebody for the good of themselves without wanting anything back in return.
Right.
He said that's true love. That's the purpose of life. To give good for the good of that person, not wanting anything in return.
Yeah.
That's faith. Because you don't want anything in return.
Right.
You're just doing good for the sake of good.
Well, what I'm talking about
deep,
is
though.
Yeah, of course. But what I'm talking about is terms of, like, say, believing in heaven or being,
of course, the afterlife. That's huge.
But being rewarded. What I mean
rewarded
is
for your good.
You're not doing all of this stuff and thinking, like, I'm doing this just because I'm going to get something out of it.
Yes.
You're doing it, like I was saying earlier, about You're doing something because it feels good to do something good. I help people all the time and never ask for anything in return because I feel that that's what I should be doing.
It just feels like a part of your nature.
I don't sit in my chair or lay in bed at night and think like, wow, like I feel good because I did something for somebody. It's like I do it and then I move on from it.
That's great.
You know?
That's great. So anyway, that kind of sums up Eric's portion. That sums up your portion?
Yeah,
I don't take words from
you. Because, I mean, we literally could just keep going on and on. I have tons of information on it, but I just wanted to touch on it because there's so much, and I would encourage our listeners to do some research on nihilism, existentialism, absurdism, and it just keeps going. It branches off into all these different philosophies because I went down, Chris and I like to refer to it as the rabbit hole, but I went down the rabbit hole and I had to pull myself out of it because I didn't want to sit here and talk about this for 3 days.
Yes, for sure. So we're going to get into my lecture next, which is based, I want to say my lecture, our talk, our podcast, what's called What is Faith? What is the true meaning of faith? And we're going to go against my research. But anyway, we're going to take a little break before that.